change.
Well, we're going to stay with environmental issues. We're going to talk about sand now and the Mekong River. I've been learning a lot about this today. It's fascinating. So much sand is being extracted that the river banks of the Mekong are collapsing in places. That in turn threatens its entire ecosystem as well as the homes of hundreds of thousands of people. Now, here you see the Mekong running down through 6 countries in Southeast Asia. Studies are showing its bed across a stretch of several hundred kilometres has been lowered by several metres in just a few years, and this is all being caused by sand dredging. So in the last 20 years, global demand for sand has gone through the roof, up threefold. China's the biggest user by far, and here's a fact for you. China consumed more sand between 2011 and 2013 than America did in all of the 20th century. The reason is that sand is one of the main components of cement, and it's been essential for the rapid urbanisation of many rural areas in China. It's also used in many other industries, including cosmetics and fertilisers. Here's Beth Timmins, who's written the story on the BBC website, if you want to read it there.
Well, it's not just China here, Ros. It's all countries that are experiencing mass urbanisation that are driving this. So you actually have Singapore as well bulking up their land mass by 20% since their independence in 1965. And we have to ask ourselves, where is the sand coming from? And with Singapore, Vietnam and Cambodia, where the Mekong actually runs through, they're 2 of the countries it runs through, they officially banned exports of river sand from the Mekong. But then you still have Singapore officially recording imports from Cambodia, despite it saying that they've banned that. So it's hard to legislate around so much trade in this dredging. So
do all the countries affected and involved talk to each other? Is there any possibility of coordination?
Well, the UN actually drafted new guidelines this March on how we should tackle the sand dredging problem and the environmental degradation it's causing. But they are only guidelines still, so there's not much action apart from that's taking place at the moment, apart from by NGOs and river scientists really looking into what's happening there.
Well, in terms of what's happening, I was mentioning that all of this dredging is affecting the ecosystems within the river. Can you help us understand a bit more about that impact?
Yeah, so you've got 500,000 people who live in the Mekong whose homes are at risk from this. Then you also have the world's largest inland fishery on the Mekong. So that supports 60 million people's as a food source. And then WWF were telling me as well that 800 different species of fish live in this river. And also the endangered Irrawaddy dolphin. The Mekong supports one of the largest remaining populations of the Irrawaddy dolphin. So it's really an important ecosystem for a lot of species, not just humans.
So let's imagine you accept that this is a problem in the Mekong River, but you also accept there's a huge demand for sand because urbanisation is occurring, that's not about to stop. What's the alternative? How can you urbanise without taking huge amounts of sand out of rivers like this?
Well, this is a common misconception because a lot of people think sand, we can get it from deserts, why can't we use that? But the desert sand is actually too rounded and softened to be used in concrete. So river sand is used in concrete, it's used in the glass for the camera, the electronics in the phone in your pocket. So we need river sand to do this. But lots of different startups are trying to explore how we could use desert sand and make it coarser and make it biodegradable. And one of the startups I was interviewing for this article are called Finite, and they've actually managed to make a product from that. So it turns the desert sand into the river sand and is biodegradable and uses half the carbon footprint for this. So there are ways, but it needs a lot more investment, and it's not as quick as just dredging sand from your local river if you're a builder. So it's a difficult one to legislate against.
What an interesting story. You can read more about that on the BBC News website.